Article 136. It is Section 136 that provides that an election for president shall be held. And it will be held in the manner, namely, that all registered voters shall be accorded an opportunity to participate in that election. From Article 136, the next article that engages that election is Article 138. And it's important, my lords, that I lay these articles there, right at the word go, because that will define the parameters of this engagement. Article 138, sub-article 3, provides that in that presidential election, all persons registered as voters shall be entitled to vote. Voters will be entitled to vote. B, paragraph B, the poll will be by secret ballot. C, at the polling stations, IEBC will tally, verify, and declare the result. My lords, those are the precepts, the commands set by the Constitution. From those commands, one goes to sub-article 4, and this article, sub-article 4 provides that at least 1/2 of the votes and at least 25% votes cast in each of more than half of the counties will be the ones determinant of a victory. Sub-article 4, my lords, introduces a quantitative analysis. That quantitative analysis, my lords, it is not a term of art, it is actually one of the constitutional dictates. From those analyses, my lords, or from that analysis, one starts to see how the contest in a presidential election must be held. It must be held in the manner set out in Article 138, and then the qualification is as set out in sub-article 4. My lords, from there one then engages Article 86 of the Constitution, and Article 86 of the Constitution provides how the election will be held. Number 1 is the use of a voting method. Number 2, the votes are counted, tallied by the presiding officer. Then the second tier, constituency level, and appropriate mechanisms are set in place. Having set out the constitutional principles, my lords, we then look at the petition before you. It is not an allegation before you that the persons entitled to vote did not vote. That is not an allegation. So going to the commands set out in Article 136, 3A, persons entitled to vote, it is not an allegation that any persons entitled to vote were denied the opportunity to vote. So as against A, my lords would tick complied with. B, the poll was by secret ballot. It is not an allegation before you that anywhere within this country there was any voting in a manner other than a secret ballot. So as regards that, my lords would be entitled to say complied with. Number 3, upon the close of the polling stations, it is common ground, a tally and a declaration was made. So as against C, my lords, will be perfectly entitled to tick complied with. Having complied with the commands set in the Constitution, then one naturally goes to sub-article 4. Sub-article 4 required all the votes to be tallied, and then you get the candidate with more than 1/2 of the votes cast. From all the material before you, the third candidate is the candidate, or the third respondent is the candidate who had more than 1/2 of the votes cast. So as regards A of 4, one can answer emphatically and without any fear of contradiction that the evidence shows that the third candidate or the third respondent is the candidate who garnered more than 1/2 of the votes cast. And C, again, it must be common ground that the third respondent had 39 counties in Kenya, 39 counties in Kenya, which gave him more than 25% of the votes in those counties. Hence, it requires how the election is to be held. My lords, the election complied with the Constitution, and as regards who was the winner, again we see, my lords, the evidence demonstrates it's the third respondent who was the winner. So the question therefore must come, on what circumstances can this election be invalidated? And the petition is quite right. The petitioner is seeking an invalidation of a process that was valid. It is valid, as I have indicated, because it complied with all the constitutional provisions. So the petitioner is now seeking to invalidate which was otherwise a valid election. My lords, I have set out those articles of the Constitution because it's very easy to fall into a trap and regard a contest at this level as if it is a contestation at the High Court on other elections apart from the presidential election. Other elections other than the presidential election, the contestation would be based on Elections Act and qualitative approaches to that election. My lords, I appreciate that the Elections Act has a place to play, but that place is subordinate to the Constitution. I will now deal sequentially, but bearing those principles in mind, to the issues that have been advanced in this litigation. I will start with the minor Kiai judgment that was delivered by the High Court in June this year, barely 45 days before the date for the general election. Minor Kiai is a case that started at the High Court, escalated to the Court of Appeal. At the Court of Appeal, NASA, a political coalition, sought to be enjoined and was enjoined in that appeal. As a matter of fact, I do recall we did not, Jubilee did not participate, but I do recall NASA was represented by, amongst other, my good friend Senator Orengo. And a 5-judge bench of the Court of Appeal held, amongst other things, that the polling unit is the lowest unit where the poll must be held and a declaration made. That's the first principle of law that is set out in the minor Kiai case. The polling station. Polling station is where the first declaration of a presidential contest is to be held. The next principle set out is that that document at the polling station is the primary document, and the word used is primary document. Why it is primary, my lord, is so that we can steer away from this contestation about mirror images of that document. Since it is the primary document, if there is any contest about a mirror image, then one must revert to the primary document because it is available. My lords, that case is the one that was, so to speak, the reference point during the last general election. A reference point because it determined for the first time that the votes tallied and declared at those early levels or early tiers in the contest are primary and final. Because they are final, they cannot be altered at the National Tallying Center, and those votes will be taken in their original form as declared at the areas of the electoral contest. My lords, many other cases were litigated. In total, there were about 27 cases, including a case that was adjudicated barely a week before the general election, requiring declaration of results within 7 hours from the conclusion of the contest. There were many cases. The next area I go to, my lord, is the polling date. On the polling date, my lords, it must now be obvious, as I indicated, that all the constitutional requirements were complied with. There is no allegation that elections were not held countrywide. There is no allegation that any Kenyan voter was denied the right to vote. There is no allegation that any region of this country was disallowed to vote. To the converse, my lord, we are in unison, in agreement, that polling was held throughout the Republic and in a very peaceful manner. Now, my lords, and this now I start to engage the petitioners. What we carried out in the polling stations is an electoral contest. And a contest of politics has its own uniqueness. It is not a contest in science. It's a contest in seeking voters from the electorate. So consequently, my lords, the Elections Act anticipates that there will be questions about the integrity of the process, and the Elections Act provides for observers to be accredited. Observers to be accredited so that they can ensure or be able to be critically analyze the integrity of the process. Many observers were accredited. My lords, in the affidavit of Davis Shiu, we have produced many observers' reports. These reports, my lords, have statutory underpinning. They are required by Section 42 of the Elections Act, and the report must be provided or submitted to IEBC pursuant to Regulation 94, Sub-Regulation 6. So these reports are not without a basis. They have a basis in law, and they are a requirement because it is the first assessment of the electoral contest. And as I keep on referring to this, my lord, it is an electoral contest. My lords, in this affidavit by Davis Shield, we have attached various reports. At handwritten page 4 is the first report by ELOG, Elections Observation Group. On the first page, they say, and there is no dispute, they had 8,300 observers in all the 47 counties in Kenya. They had 8,300 observers. I go to handwritten page 6. On the election day process, I read, ELOG observers were properly permitted to observe in 98.4 of the polling stations. I'm at handwritten page 6, my lord. ELOG observers were properly permitted to observe in 98.4 of the polling stations. Handwritten page 6. The annexures. And then voting, we see that 7.6% of the stations, the KIMS kit failed. I'll go very quickly to page 7, where I'm looking for. Closing and counting, I read the first bullet. An ODM, Wiper, ANC or Fort Kenya Party agent representing the NASA coalition were present, and this is important, my lords, were present in 84% of all the polling stations. In stations where they were present, the NASA agent signed the declaration of results for the presidential elections in 93.8% of those polling stations. In 93.8% of the polling stations, NASA agents signed the declaration for the presidential elections. My lords, this next bullet, for the closing and counting process, a Jubilee Party agent was present in 92.3% of all the polling stations. In stations where they were present, the Jubilee agents signed the declaration of results for the presidential elections in 95.8% of those polling stations. So, my lords, without even going any further, you see that the two candidates had agents throughout the country, and those agents signed the presidential declaration forms. My lords, we go to the next page. ELOG, with so many observers, had a projection on how those candidates had fared. I'm on page 8. Their projection before the results were announced, was that Uhuru Kenyatta would get 54% of the votes. When the results were declared, he had 54.3%. One can see the near accuracy of their projection. Odinga Raila, they say they projected 44.9%. He got 44.7%. Again, very near to the eventual outcome. Why do I say this, my lords? It's because in an electoral contest, the participants to that contest are able to fairly well determine, number one, issues of integrity, and number two, who is likely to be the winner. My Lords, in this observer's report that was submitted in compliance with our domestic law, there is one recurring theme. The process was free, fair, and credible. Free, fair, and credible. My Lords, I go to the next observer's report by the African Union. It is at handwritten page 10, and it is dated 14th August 2017. At page 13 of that report, they make this observation. Based on his observations as reflected in his preliminary statement and the observations in this supplement, the AU is therefore of the view the presidential election results publicly announced by IEBC are a true reflection of the will of the people of Kenya. A true reflection of the will of the people of Kenya. I move quickly, I'll move quickly to another report. This is a report by the Commonwealth, and this will be found at page 26 of the annexures. A report by the Commonwealth, my Lord. And I am looking at page 31. The paragraph starting with, in this regard. In this regard, we commend the reassurance of the chairperson of IEBC that results will not be declared until that form. And then at the bottom, our overall conclusion, this is the point I'm looking for, our overall conclusion is that the opening, voting, closing, and counting process at the polling stations on 8th August were credible, transparent, and inclusive. They used different words: credible, transparent, and inclusive. Proceeds, we commend and congratulate Kenyan voters, the staff of IEBC, political party agents, candidates' agents, the media, and all the security personnel for their commitment to the democratic process. They were efficient in the conduct of their respective roles, which contributed to the conduct of a peaceful poll on 8th August 2017. So apart from credible, transparent, and inclusive, they also give it another tick. It was peaceful. And that, again, my Lords, is a point I would wish to buttress in a second. Throughout the day of 8th August, the elections were held in the most peaceful manner. There were no riots, there was no commotion anywhere, and that is not an allegation before you. We are in agreement that we are peaceful voters, and we participated in our civic duties in accordance with that expectation. My Lords, based on those observers' reports, I would request my Lords to hold and find that the process was carried out, integrity is demonstrated, and in this electoral contest, my Lords, what one is looking for is a wholesome approach to that process, not a utilitarian principle approach, which means self against all the others. I will therefore urge and request my Lords to hold that this process had all the hallmarks of a process that was credible. I go to what has been thrown at us. Number one, results started streaming at 5:07. And that is supposed to be a complaint instead of a compliment. A moment ago, my lords, I indicated to you, when you have time in the affidavit of Winnie Nguchu, you see we have analyzed all those cases. Even a case requiring results to be declared within 7 hours. So they start streaming at 5:07, and that becomes a complaint. Let me deal with that complaint because it's important I deal with it. It is true, my lords, that the first result that streamed was at 5:07 from a polling station where the first petitioner had 6 votes. And the third respondent had 4 votes. So the votes cast in that polling station were 10. 10 only. And there's no argument that they were only 10. But the argument is it was very quick for those results to stream in. My lords, how long does it require to count 10 ballot papers in the presence of agents? You hold 1, 2, to count 10, my lords. We do not want to waste your time. Would be something towards 2 minutes, if not less. So for results to stream at 5:07, it's a polling station. Narok, it's from a prison, Narok main prison. The next stream was at 5:08. Where the first petitioner had 9 votes, the third responded 3 votes. So total votes 12. And I'll only give 3 more. The third was 5:09. First petitioner had 5, third respondent had 7. And all the timesheets are before you, my lords. And then we go to 5:12. Petitioner had 3, third respondent had 43. And finally, 5:14, where petitioner had 42, third respondent had 3. My lords will see that those were polling stations, and their polling stations, all the timesheets are before you, and they will be found in the affidavit of Davis Shishil, who was the chief presidential agent. And those are documents, my lords, that all chief agents were given access to, and every party agent had access and was given copies of all these. From that analysis, I request, my lords, to make the following deductions. First, that polling stations did not necessarily have 700 voters as submitted by one of my learned friends. And number 2, that formula that was displayed before you for a long time with a mathematical basis which is unknown to any other person other than the author of it, has no application. Because from these results, one can be able to see that all these candidates are getting votes from polling stations in a manner peculiar to that polling station. There was no mathematical predetermined way of voting in the contest, and there can't be. As a matter of fact, even going by the declared results, one will see not a difference of 11%, which persisted even yesterday. I would have expected really by a process of deduction that one will see you cannot say 53 points, is it? Yes, 53 against 44 cannot be 11%. My lords, I will be turning to those arithmetic in a little while, but that mathematical formula has absolutely no application whatsoever. My lords, the streaming in of the results was as a consequence to the process that had already been started of having a very free and fair election, and an election which was conducted peacefully, and counting and tallying of votes started taking place immediately after 5 p.m. My lords, I dealt with the observers' reports. I went to the streaming. It will be a good point for me to indicate that we have a video of one of the persons who participated as an observer, and it will be important, my lords, for you to hear what is said about our elections. This is Mr. Kelly, who was a candidate in 2004 as a Democratic Party candidate in the United States of America. Having been a presidential candidate and having participated as an observer in our elections, his views, I would submit, would have a bearing on what took place. Hey, time.
So much for joining us on the program. I want to start out by asking you about Odinga's comments that the results of the election are fake and factitious, about these allegations that certain voting machines were defunct. How do you respond to that? What have you observed?
Well, we observed a election process, more than 400 observers from 9 different international missions all agreed that the basic process of carrying out the election was quite positive. There were little aberrations here and there. But at this point in time, I want to be mindful, the election is still going on, they're still counting, the process is still underway. But we believe that the Elections Commission in Kenya has put together a process that will allow each and every vote's integrity to be proven and to be protected. We think that the open process we witnessed, where every party agent was present, where they all agreed on what a disqualified ballot was, what a qualified ballot was. They were present when the ballots were open, present when they were closed. They even were asked, do you agree with the final tally? And after there was all agreement, the tally was sent in on what is called this 34A document. So there is a way to go back. If anything was changed, if anything was electronically fiddled with, there is a way to go back and absolutely ascertain what happened in the polling station. So by paper ballots, there is a protection of each and every Kenyan's vote. And I think it is important to let the process work through so that the Election Commission has a chance to show Kenyans the way in which they have held to the rules and, in fact, implemented an election that is accountable.
So given what you observed and what you've